I married him for cheap housing. Then immigration knocked. I married my classmate for cheaper student housing, and 3 months later, immigration showed up at our door to check if we were actually in love. If they decided our marriage was fake, I would lose my home and my scholarship. If they decided it was fraud, he could be deported. The stupidest part? Somewhere along the way, I really did fall in love with my fake husband. I had 2 options: lie to the government or tell the truth and risk losing him anyway. The knock that could ruin everything came on a random Tuesday. I was in our tiny married student apartment kitchen, wearing one of Ethan's oversized t-shirts with no bra, holding a mug of coffee I hadn't even sipped yet, trying to decide whether I had time to brush my teeth before my 8 a.m. class. 3 knocks, sharp, even, official. Not a neighbor, not a package. Not, hey, do you have sugar? My stomach dropped before I even moved. I already knew who it was. Immigration Services. We had gotten the email 2 weeks earlier. Your marriage has been selected for a random home verification visit. Date and time will be provided with at least 72 hours notice. 72 hours turned into 48. 48 turned into 24. And then there it was, sitting in my inbox like a bomb. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Come prepared. Have documentation. Be ready to prove your relationship is bona fide. Basically, convince us this is not fake. Convince them that my marriage, which had started as a panicked solution and a spreadsheet idea, had somehow become the most real thing in my life. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door creak open. Chloe? Ethan's voice was thick with sleep. What's going on? I forced myself to walk to the door. Every step felt heavy, like the hallway had doubled in length overnight. I pressed my eye to the peephole, badge, clipboard, calm, assessing expression of a man who absolutely did not come here to make my morning better. It was really happening. I did not know it yet, but the next 2 hours were going to decide whether we kept this strange, accidental life we had built together, or whether the government was about to tear apart the only thing that had ever actually felt like home. I opened the door. Mrs. Chloe? The officer asked. He glanced down at his clipboard. I'm Officer James. I'm here to conduct a routine verification visit regarding your marriage. To Mr. Ethan. May I come in? His voice was polite, almost gentle. That somehow made it worse. Behind me, Ethan stepped into the hall, hair a mess, t-shirt wrinkled, eyes still dazed from sleep. He looked like the exact opposite of someone prepared to pass a government exam about his love life. And standing there between the man who could decide our fate and the man I had technically married for cheaper rent, I could not stop thinking about how this all started. With a different email, 6 words long. Housing deposit overdue. Eviction notice pending. I was in the library when I got that one. 3rd floor, back corner. The spot near the window where nobody ever bothered me. I was pretending I understood my statistics homework and pretending my life was not hanging by a thread. My scholarship covered tuition. That was it. Housing, food, books, the laptop I needed for class. That all came from a combination of loans, 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, 3 nights a week tutoring high school kids online, and babysitting for my professor's twins whenever she needed date night. And it still was not enough. That is the thing nobody tells you about being broke in an expensive city. It is not just hard. It is a full-time job. Every decision is a trap. Groceries or phone bill, bus fare or walk 40 minutes in the rain, buy the textbook or hope someone leaks the PDF in the group chat. I felt my phone buzz against the wooden table and I almost ignored it. Then I saw the subject line. Housing deposit overdue, eviction notice pending. The all caps made my heart drop even before I opened it. I read it once, twice, 3 times. By the 4th read-through, my hands were shaking. I had been behind on my housing deposit for 3 weeks. I thought I had more time. The bursar's office had told me I had until the end of the month. Apparently, the end of the month had come early for me. I closed my laptop and walked back to my dorm in a haze. I do not remember crossing campus. I remember the cold air on my face. I remember the way my feet felt heavy, like I was walking underwater. When I opened the dorm room door, half of it was empty. My roommate's side of the room, the girl I had lived with for a year and a half, was stripped bare. No fairy lights, no plant in the corner, no cluttered desk with makeup and notebooks, just an empty mattress and a folded piece of paper sitting on the bare wood of her desk. I picked it up, transferred to off-campus housing. Good luck with everything. There was a little smiley face drawn next to it. Good luck with everything. Like everything was a mildly annoying group project, and not my entire life collapsing. I stared at the empty half of the room and felt something inside me slide toward panic. An hour later, I got another email from the housing office. This one so artificially cheerful, I could practically hear the fake smile through the screen. Since my roommate had moved out, I had 2 options. Option 1, find a new roommate by Friday. Option 2, move to a different dorm on the other side of campus that cost $300 more per month. $300 I absolutely did not have. And because the universe has a terrible sense of humor, financial aid had just added a new requirement for need-based scholarships. Stable housing verification for the academic year. No housing, no scholarship, no degree, no anything. That night was the night I stopped sleeping. I lay in my narrow dorm bed, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the silence on the other side of the room, where my roommate's soft snoring used to be. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words. Eviction notice pending. Stable housing verification. Good luck with everything. I did not feel lucky. I felt like I was standing on a cliff, watching the edge crumble under my feet. The next day, I went to the housing office and waited in line long enough to learn that no, there were no cheaper options. No, they could not give me an extension. No, they could not promise not to move me into the more expensive building. On my way out, I noticed a flyer taped to the bulletin board near the door. Married student housing available, 1-bedroom apartments, discounted rates, year-long lease. I snorted and walked past it. If someone had told me then that I would be living in one of those apartments with a ring on my finger 3 months later, I would have laughed in their face, and then I would have cried. I did not know yet that the housing crisis was only half of the mess headed my way. The other half was sitting in the library, staring at his own nightmare on paper. I had seen Ethan around campus long before that night. Intro to econ, 2nd row from the front. Same seat every time. Same worn notebook. Same serious face. He never raised his hand. He never whispered to his neighbors. He just sat there, listening, like every word might be important later. We were library familiar. Hallway nods. Hey, don't I know you from somewhere? Eye contact. That sort of thing. The night everything changed, he was on the same library floor as me, just a different corner. I walked past his table at first. I only noticed him because his posture was wrong. Ethan always sat straight, shoulders squared, like he had been trained from birth to be prepared for anything. Tonight he was slumped, elbows on the table, hands in his hair, staring at a piece of paper like it had personally ruined his life. I should have kept walking. Instead, I stopped. "Hey," I said quietly. "You okay?" He looked up, startled. Up close, his eyes were dark and tired, with faint shadows underneath like he had not slept in a while. For a second, I thought he would brush me off, say fine, and go back to pretending. Then his shoulders sagged. "No," he said slowly. "I don't think I am." He held out the paper. "Will you read this?" he asked. The header made my chest tighten. Department of Homeland Security, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. I scanned the lines. There were a lot of long words and official phrases. The important part came in the middle. "Due to a discrepancy in your file, your student status and associated visa are under review." Under review. Two words that sounded calm and clinical, but what they actually meant was, your entire life here might be over. "I did everything right," he said. His voice was flat, almost numb. "I filed every form on time. I paid every fee. I have a 3.9 GPA, and now I could get an email any day telling me I have to leave." His housing was tied to his enrollment. If they pulled his student status, he would lose his apartment, his job, his classes, and then his right to stay in the country. I sat down in the chair across from him. "I got an eviction email," I said after a minute. "Different department. Same vibe." He blinked at me. So I told him. About the overdue deposit, the roommate who bailed, the more expensive dorm, the stable housing requirement. How every solution opened up a new problem. We sat there for a long time, two almost strangers. Trading disasters, like war stories. Different problems. Same sinking feeling. At some point, I joked, just out of curiosity, "Do you know how much married student housing costs?" I meant it as a throwaway line, dark humor, a way to make us both feel less like we were standing on a burning planet. Instead of laughing, Ethan frowned thoughtfully. "Hold on," he said. He opened his laptop. I pulled out my phone. We both went to the university housing website. We scrolled in silence. We found it at the same time. Married student housing. 1-bedroom apartments. Monthly rent. Significantly cheaper than the dorm I was about to get shoved into. Year-long lease. Automatically counted as stable housing for financial aid. Priority consideration if one spouse was an international student. We stared at the screen, then at each other. "You're kidding," I whispered. "Unfortunately, no," he said. "We're not actually considering this," I said quickly. "Of course not," he replied. Silence. "Hypothetically," he said after a moment, "getting married could strengthen my case while my status is under review. It shows ties to the community, stability, evidence that I am not a flight risk. That is how the lawyers phrase it. Hypothetically," I said slowly, "it would also solve my housing verification problem and cut my rent in half." More silence. "This would be fraud," I pointed out. "Technically, marriage fraud is when you marry only for immigration benefits," he said, and I realized he had already researched this. If there are additional legitimate reasons legally, it is more complicated. More complicated than two people who barely know each other getting legally married for an apartment and a better chance at not having their lives ruined? I asked. He hesitated. "Yes," he said finally. "More complicated than that. We should have dropped it there." We did not. The next night, we met at the 24-hour coffee shop just to talk about options. The night after that, we brought notebooks. By the third night, we were making spreadsheets and lists and worst-case scenarios. Every time we tried to talk ourselves out of it, reality shoved us back. If we did nothing, I likely lost my housing and scholarship. If we did nothing, he might get a notice that his visa was revoked and that he had 30 days to leave. We were running out of normal choices. The courthouse was smaller than I expected. We went on a Thursday afternoon. In the 2-hour gap between my bookstore shift and my evening tutoring session, the clouds were low and gray. It felt like the world knew we were about to do something huge and was pretending not to look directly at us. Ethan wore a button-down shirt. He had ironed that morning until not a single wrinkle remained. I wore a navy dress I had bought at a thrift store for a job interview I did not get. We did not look like a couple in love. We looked like two exhausted students trying very hard not to think too deeply about what they were doing. The clerk barely glanced at us. She processed our marriage license like she had processed 20 others that day. She called over a coworker to serve as a witness. He signed the form without looking up from his phone. The judge read the standard vows in a bored voice. "Do you, Chloe, take Ethan to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I thought about the eviction email, about my roommate's empty bed, about my mother 3,000 miles away who thought I was thriving, about my scholarship hanging in the balance, about the tiny part of me that was whispering, "This is insane, this is insane, this is insane." "I do," I said. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. "And do you, Ethan, take Chloe to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I turned my head. He was looking at me, not at the judge, not at the papers. His expression was serious and careful, like he was trying to memorize something important. "I do," he said. The judge pronounced us married. That was it. No music, no flowers, no family or friends, just signatures, a stamp, and a quietly life-altering congratulations. We stepped back out into the gray afternoon, newly married. "So," Ethan said. "So," I repeated. We stood there awkwardly for a second. Two people who had just done something huge and still needed to get to their part-time jobs on time. Then Ethan laughed. A short surprise sound. "We should probably go look at our apartment," he said. "Our apartment," I repeated. The words felt strange and fragile in my mouth like a new language. He held out his hand. I stared at it. Then I took it. We walked toward campus like we had not just changed the entire trajectory of our lives in a 15-minute ceremony between somebody else's speeding ticket hearing and an older couple renewing their vows. I had no idea that was the last moment any of this would feel like a game. Married student. Housing turned out to be a faded brick building that had clearly decided to stop trying sometime in the 1980s. The elevator made noises that sounded like a plea for mercy. The hallway lights flickered like they were part of a haunted house. But when we opened the door to apartment 4B, it smelled faintly like fresh paint, and the carpet was clean. And there were 2 keys on the counter with both of our names on the lease. It was ours, our apartment, our names together in the university system. When I called financial aid to update my housing status, the woman on the other end of the line said, "Oh, married student housing. That's wonderful. Congratulations on your marriage. Your stable housing requirement is satisfied." I thanked her, hung up the phone, and went into the tiny bathroom, where I locked the door and quietly cried until the tightness in my chest eased a little. We set rules the first night. We sat at the water wobbly kitchen table with a legal pad between us and made it official. Rule 1, no pretending for each other in private. Rule 2, no sharing a bed. Rule 3, no doing anything that could confuse the boundaries of our arrangement. We called it an arrangement out loud, like we were signing a business contract and not marriage papers. Ethan took the couch. I took the bedroom. We divided chores. We split groceries. We agreed that if either of us started dating someone, we would figure it out somehow, some way. I made pasta on night 3. I made dinner, I announced, proud. Ethan peered into the pot. The pasta had fused into one solid, gelatinous block that sloshed when I poked it with a spoon. Did you stir it? He asked. Obviously, I lied. How often? Enough to say I stirred it. He looked at the pot again. I will order pizza, he said. I laughed. He smiled, and for a second, the tightness in his face eased. It was supposed to be simple. 2 roommates with rings, saving each other's futures. But living with someone does something to you. You cannot stop yourself from learning them. By week 2, the rules were already fraying at the edges. I discovered that Ethan woke up at 5:30 every morning, always without an alarm. He moved around the apartment so quietly that the only evidence of his existence at that hour was the smell of coffee drifting down the hallway. Every morning when I stumbled into the kitchen at 7, there was a mug waiting for me where I always stood. The first time I saw it, I blinked at it like it might be a trap. I did not know how you take it, he said from the table, without looking up from his laptop, so I left it black. He said it once. Somehow he never forgot that I like 1 sugar packet but no cream. He learned that I talked to my homework. You just told your statistics problem to get it together or get out of your face, he observed one night from the couch. It knows what it did, I muttered. He laughed. Not the polite laugh I had heard in econ once or twice, but something real and startled. I started leaving a blanket over the back of the couch. I told myself it was just in case guests came over. Really, it was because Ethan always fell asleep there at 2 in the morning. Laptop open, neck at a terrible angle, and my chest hurt a little when I saw him like that, so I developed a new habit. On my way to bed, I would gently close his laptop, drape the blanket over him, and turn off the lamp. I told myself it was just good manners. I knew deep down I was lying. The first time someone called me his wife, something twisted inside me so hard I almost dropped the pen I was holding. I was at the housing office turning in a maintenance form because the shower knob had decided it only wanted to be scalding or Arctic. The woman behind the desk smiled brightly. You can bring this back anytime today, Mrs. Ethan's wife, she joked. We love seeing our newlyweds taking such good care of their home, Mrs. Ethan's wife. I signed the form with a hand that trembled just a little. That night, while Ethan chopped vegetables in our tiny kitchen, I blurted, someone called me your wife today. He did not look up from the cutting board. You are my wife, he said logically. I know, but she said it like it was real, I said. Out loud in public? It felt weird, he paused. Weird how? He asked. Good weird or bad weird? I stared at his back. I do not know, I said honestly. He glanced over his shoulder. Let me know when you figure it out, he said quietly. I did not. Not then. Week 3, he got sick. Not just sniffles sick, real sick, fever, cough, the whole package. I came home from my shift at the bookstore and found him on the couch, wrapped in 3 blankets, breathing shallowly, cheeks flushed. His laptop sat abandoned on the coffee table. I am fine, he croaked as soon as he saw me. You sound like you are dying, I said. You are definitely not fine. He tried to sit up and failed. Okay, he admitted. Maybe not fine. For a moment, panic flared. If his fever was too high, if he ended up in a hospital, if some random nurse asked too many questions about our paperwork, this could become another problem. But when I put my hand on his forehead, the only thing I could think about was how hot his skin felt and how he leaned into my touch like he had been craving it. I am making soup, I said. You do not cook, he reminded me. Tonight I do, I said. I watched a recipe video 3 times. I followed each step like it was a bomb defusal tutorial. It came out not terrible. I sat cross-legged on the floor next to the couch while he ate slowly from the bowl. Thank you, he murmured. When he finished, I took the empty bowl to the sink. On my way back, I pressed my palm to his forehead again. Still too warm. His eyes drifted shut and I felt his cheek move, pressing into my hand just slightly. Not enough to make a big deal about. Just enough to make my breath catch. I did not go to the bedroom that night. I sat at the other end of the couch with the blanket pulled over both our legs, watching a terrible reality show on low volume. Every time his breathing hitched, every time he shifted, I glanced over to make sure he was still okay. At some point, his hand found mine under the blanket. He did not grab it. He just slid his fingers close enough that they touched. Skin to skin. I could have moved away. I did not. The rules we had written on that legal pad suddenly felt flimsy. The almost kiss happened a few weeks later. On a Sunday at 1 in the morning. We had been studying late. I was on the floor surrounded by notes. Ethan was at the desk typing. I made some snarky comment about our professor's obsession with group projects. It was not even that funny, but Ethan laughed, and I tilted my head back to grin at him and misjudged the distance. My skull collided with the edge of the coffee table. Ow! I yelped, clutching the back of my head. Ethan was on the floor next to me in 2 steps. Let me see, he said urgently. I am fine, I insisted, blinking through the sudden tears in my eyes. You hit it hard, he said. Let me see. He gently moved my fingers aside and parted my hair. Checking for blood, for swelling, for something. His fingers were warm against my scalp. His face was close, closer than it had ever been. I looked up. He was already looking down at me. We both froze. I watched his eyes flick to my mouth and back up. For one suspended, impossible second, the air between us felt charged. I could feel every place we were almost touching. His knee next to mine, his hand near my cheek, the edge of his breath on my lips. All I had to do was lean forward a little bit. A car alarm went off outside, blaring and obnoxious. We both jumped. He cleared his throat and dropped his hand. You should put ice on that, he said. His voice was rougher than normal. Yeah, I said, standing up too quickly. I will. We did not talk about it. We did not mention how close our faces were. We did not mention the way my heart had slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. But that night, alone in my bed, I stared at the ceiling and replayed the angle of his face, the softness in his eyes, the tiny movement of his fingers in my hair. This was supposed to be paperwork, a strategy, a loophole. When had it started feeling like something else? 6 weeks into our arrangement, while I was ringing up an overpriced hoodie for an incoming freshman, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out of my pocket during a lull at the register. The subject line made my vision blur. Notice of scheduled home verification visit. I opened the email. In-home inspection. Separate interviews. Documentation of shared residence and finances. Random date. Random time. Random my ass. My hand shook so badly I dropped the hoodie. The freshman frowned. Are you okay? He asked. I have to go, I said. You work here, right? He said. I will come back, I promised, even though I had no idea if that was true. I bolted. I do not remember the walk home. I remember cold air in my lungs, my heart pounding, the campus blurring past me. Ethan was already at the apartment when I burst in. You saw it, I said. He turned his laptop around. On the screen was the same email. Underneath it was a document he had already started typing. A list. Things they might ask, things they might look for, things we needed to know, not just feel. We prepare, he said. He had dark circles under his eyes. His jaw was clenched, but his voice was steady. We did not have the luxury of panicking. The next 2 weeks were like cramming for the most important exam of our lives. We turned our marriage into flashcards. What is my middle name? He asked. Arjun, I answered immediately. Your mom wanted something that worked in both languages. He blinked. I did not tell you that story in full, he said. You did, I said. You just did not realize. What is my comfort food? I asked. He did not hesitate. Boxed mac and cheese, he said. The neon orange kind. You make it when you are stressed, sad, or celebrating. You put in too much butter. He was right. What do I do when I'm really upset? I asked. You go quiet, he said. Then you start cleaning. When it gets really bad, you call your mom and talk about safe topics so she will not worry. Even though you are clearly falling apart. I stared at him. I pay attention, he said softly. We practiced tiny, stupid details, because every article we read suggested they might try to catch us in contradictions. Which side of the bed did he sleep on? Which side of the bed did I sleep on? Who bought the mugs? Who picked the comforter? What brand of coffee we used? Who did laundry more often? We realized something strange very quickly. We were not learning new information about each other. We were putting words to things we already knew. That was both comforting and terrifying. The night before the visit, we fought. I do not even remember what started it exactly. Something small. A question repeated one too many times. A correction delivered in the wrong tone. What did I wear to the courthouse? He asked from the couch. The blue button down, I said. It was gray. He insisted. It looked blue under the lights, I argued. You ironed it for 20 minutes. I remember. Chloe, it was gray, he said. We cannot be confused about something that basic. That is exactly the kind of detail they use to decide you are lying. Sorry, I misremembered the precise shade of the shirt I wore to legally scramble my life, I snapped. Maybe I was a little stressed. That is exactly my point, he said, raising his voice. You get stressed and you shut down, and tomorrow you cannot shut down in front of him. If you panic, if you freeze, they will take it as a sign that we are not telling the truth. So you think I am going to ruin this for you, I said. Just say it. I did not say that, he said. You did not have to. I shot back. We both know what the stakes are. Your visa, my scholarship, this apartment. If one of us messes up in there, everything falls apart. I get it. He pushed himself up from the couch. This is not just about you, he said angrily. Do you think this is easy for me? Answering questions about the most personal parts of my life for a stranger? Who can decide if I am allowed to stay in the country? Do you think this is easy for me? I shot back. You think I like having to prove that I deserve a roof over my head? That I deserve to finish the degree I am breaking myself to get? We stared at each other across the living room, breathing hard. This was a mistake, I said suddenly. His face went still. What was? He asked. His voice had gone quiet again. Dangerous. This, I said, gesturing between us. Us. The arrangement. The marriage. Whatever you want to call it. We got married for paperwork, Ethan. For housing and forms and survival. It was never supposed to be anything more. Is that really what you think? He asked quietly. That is what it was, I said. We filled out a form. We signed a lease. We sent an email. We did not fall in love in some magical whirlwind. We made a desperate, practical decision. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt. Anger. Something else. Too complicated to name. What are you going to say when he asks you tomorrow? I demanded. When he looks you in the eye and asks if you love me, are you going to lie? He hesitated just for a second. I am going to say whatever keeps you in this apartment and me in this country, he said finally. If that means saying I love you, then I will say it. The words hit me like a slap. Right, I said. Of course, strategy. You are the one who keeps saying this is just survival, he said, his jaw tight. Not me. He grabbed his pillow and blanket and went to the couch without another word. I went to the bedroom, shut the door, and stared at the wall for hours. The worst part was not the possibility that tomorrow I could lose this apartment. The worst part was the possibility that I could find out that none of this had ever meant to him what it meant to me. The knock came at 7:47 a.m., and that is how we ended up where this story started. Officer James stepped into our apartment with his clipboard and his polite, unreadable expression. He moved slowly through the space, taking everything in. The tiny kitchen with its mismatched mugs. The photos tacked crookedly to the wall. Real photos. Not staged. From late nights and grocery runs and one accidental selfie, where Ethan's smile looked surprised and unguarded. The living room, with our sagging couch and the blanket that had migrated permanently there. The bedroom, with 2 pillows on the bed and 1 folded blanket at the foot. He glanced into the bathroom, where 2 toothbrushes stood in the same cup. He looked at our shoes by the door. 2 pairs of sneakers, 1 pair of boots that had seen better days. The beat-up sandals I always kicked off in a hurry. Which side of the bed does your husband sleep on? He asked me, standing near the doorway. The left, I said automatically. Closer to the door. Has he always slept in the bed? He asked. I hesitated for half a second. He used to sleep on the couch, I admitted. At first. We had rules. Then I started having these nightmares about losing the apartment, and I was not sleeping, and he noticed I slept better when he was there, so he moved into the bed. Saying it out loud made my face burn. It felt too intimate to share with a stranger in a government badge. He made a note on his clipboard. I will need to interview each of you separately, he said. Whoever is not being interviewed should wait in the other room, with the door closed. Ethan squeezed my hand as we switched places in the hallway. You have got this, he murmured. I was not sure I did, but I went into the kitchen and sat down across from Officer James anyway. He started with basic questions. What is your full name? Your date of birth? When did you first meet your husband? Where? I answered. Intro to econ, freshman year. He always sat in the second row. Did you start dating right away? He asked. I almost laughed. No, I said. We did not start dating at all. Not really. We were acquaintances. We shared a study group once. We did not hang out outside of school until everything started falling apart. How did you decide to get married? He asked. There it was. The question that sounded simple and was anything but. We were both in trouble, I said. Different kinds, but still trouble. I told him about the eviction email, about my roommate bailing, about the stable housing requirement. I told him about Ethan's letter and the phrase under review. I told him about the married housing page on the university website, the numbers that did not add up, the desperate joke that stopped being a joke. So you were aware that marriage could help with both your housing issue and your husband's immigration case, the officer said. said. Is that correct? Yes, I said. The word scraped my throat on the way out. Would you say those were factors in your decision to marry when you did? He asked. That was part of it, I said carefully. That is not a yes or a no, Mrs. Chloe, he said. I looked at his face. He did not look cruel. He did not look kind either. He looked like someone doing a job he had done many times before. Yes, I said. That was part of it. His pen scratched across the paper. And how would you describe your marriage now? He asked. He said it casually. It was anything but casual to me. I thought about our first night in the apartment, sitting at the table with our rule list. I thought about the coffee mug that magically refilled every morning, the sick night on the couch, the almost kiss on the floor, the way his eyes had looked when he said he would tell the officer he loved me if that is what it took. When we got married, I said slowly, it was practical. We were terrified. We found a way that made sense on paper. And now? He repeated. Is it still just practical? I swallowed. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. No, I said. It is not just practical anymore. Explain that, he said. At first he was a name on a lease, I said. A way to keep my scholarship. A way to keep him from losing his place here. But then we actually lived together. We saw each other at our worst and our weirdest. I know how he takes his coffee. He knows how I sound when I am trying not to cry. I took a shaky breath. I know that when he is stressed, his shoulders creep up toward his ears, I said. I know that when he is happy, he smiles with his whole face, even though he does not realize it. I know he will get out of bed to walk me home from a late shift, even if he has a big exam the next day. It stopped feeling like a contract and started feeling like having a person. Officer James watched me closely. When you married, was it for love? He asked. The safe answer was obvious. Yes, of course. We were madly in love. We could not wait to be together forever. The truth was messier. When we got married, it was not the romantic version of love, I said. It was survival. We chose each other because we did not have better options. We did not know each other the way people usually do when they decide to get married. And now? He asked quietly. Now I am in love with my husband, I said. The words came out before I could second guess them. It was the first time I had said it out loud. My voice cracked on the last word. I looked down at my hands. I did not mean to be, I added in a whisper. I did not plan for it, but I am. When something good happens, he is the first person I want to tell. When something bad happens, he is the only person I want to see. This apartment stopped feeling like just an address and started feeling like home because he is in it. Silence stretched between us. I forced myself to look up. If you take this away, I said, if you decide this is not real enough, it is not just losing housing. It is not just losing a visa. It is losing the person who turned surviving into living. I do not know whether that fits into your definition of bona fide, but it is the truth. He studied my face for a long moment. He wrote something down. Thank you for your honesty, he said at last. Please ask your husband to come in. I stood up on shaky legs. On my way to the bedroom, I passed Ethan in the hallway. His eyes searched my face. You okay? He mouthed. I nodded. He squeezed my fingers once and went into the kitchen. I closed the bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed. For 45 minutes, I stared at the wall and listened to the muffled sound of their voices through the door. Sometimes Ethan's tone rose, then fell. Once, I heard the officer laugh softly at something he said, and my heart stopped for a second. What if Ethan told a different story? What if he said it was all strategy? What if he said he did not feel the way I had just confessed to feeling? Finally, the door opened. Officer James stepped out. Ethan followed him into the living room. Thank you for your cooperation, the officer said. You will receive written notification of the outcome within approximately 2 weeks. In the meantime, please do not make any major changes to your living situation. No changes. Like we were pieces on a chessboard he might move later. He shook Ethan's hand. He shook mine. Then he left. The lock clicked. Silence rushed into the apartment. Ethan and I stood facing each other. What did you tell him? I asked. The truth, he said. Which version? I asked. The strategic truth or the actual truth? He took a step closer. I told him, he said slowly, that when we got married, we were both terrified and desperate. You were about to lose your housing. My status was under review. We saw a loophole and we took it. My chest hurt. Okay, I said. And then he continued. I told him that somewhere in the middle of pretending, I stopped pretending. I blinked. What does that mean? I asked. He took another step closer. I told him I started waking up a few minutes earlier than I needed to, just so I could sit at the table while you got ready and pretend it was normal, he said. I told him that on days you had late shifts, the apartment felt wrong without your shoes by the door. He smiled a little like he could not help it. I told him that I know your I am fine voice and your I am about to cry voice, he said. That I know you hum when you study, that you talk to your homework, that you always leave exactly 3 bites of food on your plate when you are anxious. My throat tightened. I told him that I do not know the exact moment our marriage became real, he said, but that I know there was a day when I realized I was counting time in before Chloe and after Chloe, and I cannot imagine going back to before. He was in front of me now, close enough that I could see the tiny golden flecks in his dark eyes. I told him I love my wife, he finished quietly, and that the scariest part of this whole thing is not losing my visa or this apartment. It is losing you. My breath caught. Was that tactical? I whispered. Or did you mean it? His jaw clenched. Did you mean what you told him? He asked in return. About being in love with me. My heart dropped into my stomach. You heard that? I croaked. No, he said, but I was really hoping you said it. My hands were shaking. Yes, I whispered. I meant it. Every word. His shoulders dropped, like he had been carrying something too heavy and finally set it down. Then no, he said. It was not tactical. I did not think. I just stepped forward and grabbed the front of his shirt and kissed him. It was not soft. It was not careful. It was weeks of almosts and maybes and what ifs crashing together at once. For a second, he froze. Then his hands came up, one at my waist, one at the back of my neck, and he kissed me back like he had been waiting for this as long as I had. Every time we had brushed hands, every time our shoulders had touched, every time one of us had almost said something and then stopped, it was all there. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. We should probably talk about this, he said, his forehead resting against mine. Later, I said. There is a lot to figure out, he pointed out. Later, I repeated and kissed him again. 11 days later, the email came. Subject line, case review outcome. We sat on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, my laptop open on the coffee table. Do you want to read it? I asked. Together, he said. I clicked. The words blurred for a second, then came into focus. After careful review of your case, including the home verification visit and separate interviews, our office has determined that while your marriage was not entered into under traditional circumstances, there is sufficient evidence of a bona fide ongoing relationship. Your file will be subject to periodic review for the next 2 years, during which time you must maintain maintain documentation of your shared residence and finances. This matter is considered closed pending successful completion of the review period. I read it once, twice, 3 times. Then I started crying. Not pretty crying, ugly crying, the kind where your shoulders shake and your nose runs and you make weird little gasping noises. Ethan pulled me into his arms and held me. "We are okay," he whispered into my hair. "We are okay." "I thought they were going to take you away," I sobbed. "I thought they were going to say it was not enough, that we were not enough." He leaned back just enough to look at me. "They believed us," he said. "Or at least they believed enough of us. I do not care what they call it," I said. "Case, file, relationship, whatever. I am so relieved." He wiped my tears away with his thumbs. "We kept the apartment," he said. "We kept my status. We kept us," he smiled. "I would say we did pretty well," he added. 6 months later, we got married again. Not legally. Legally, we were already done. But we had a real ceremony this time, in a park near campus, under a tree that had seen too many couples make promises to count. There were cheap fairy lights strung in branches, a lopsided cake on a picnic table, our friends gathered in folding chairs, my mom on video call, crying so much she had to keep wiping her phone screen. I wore a white sundress I found on clearance. Ethan wore the same button-down he had worn to the courthouse. Still the same argument about whether it was blue or gray. We wrote our own vows. I held his hands and tried not to cry immediately. "You were supposed to be a solution," I said. "A business arrangement. A survival tactic. You were supposed to be a name on a lease and a signature on a form." Our friends laughed softly. "But you became my best friend," I said. "My person. The one who makes coffee exactly the way I like it without me asking. The one who pays attention when I say something once and remembers it forever. The one who notices when I am not okay even when I am trying really hard to pretend I am fine." My voice shook. "You were supposed to be my way to stay in school," I said. "Instead, you became my way home." I wiped at my eyes and failed to stop the tears. The officiant smiled and nodded at Ethan. He squeezed my fingers. "You asked me once if our marriage was real," he said. I did not know how to answer. I did not know when it stopped being fake and started being the truest thing in my life. He took a breath. "I think it became real the first time I unlocked the door to our apartment and saw your shoes by the door and felt relief," he said. "Like I had been holding my breath all day and did not even notice until I could finally let it out." He smiled at me, eyes bright. "It became real the night you sat on the other end of the couch while I was sick," he said. "You pretended to watch television, but you were counting my breaths. You thought I did not notice. I did." Some of our friends laughed softly. "It became real every time you called this apartment home by accident," he said. "It became real when I realized that losing this place would hurt, but losing you would break me." He squeezed my hands tighter. "It was never just about the housing," he said. "It was always about the girl who turned a loophole into a life I do not ever want to stop living." We kissed under the trees while our friends cheered, and I thought about the girl in the library, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles went white, reading eviction notice pending and trying not to fall apart. She thought she was losing everything. She had no idea she was about to gain more than she had ever dared to ask for. Sometimes, late at night, when Ethan is asleep beside me and the city hums outside our window, I lie there and trace circles on his wrist with my fingertip and think about how close we came to never finding each other. If my roommate had not moved out, if his paperwork had been filed correctly the first time, if we had not ended up on the same floor of the library that night, if I had not made that stupid joke about married student housing, if he had laughed it off instead of opening his laptop. So many tiny things could have gone differently. We got married for student housing. We stayed married because home turned out to be a person, not an address. When people ask how we met, and they always ask, because people love a good story, we look at each other and smile. Long story, I usually say. We were both in trouble, so we decided to be in trouble together. It is the truth, just not the whole truth. The whole truth is messier and more complicated and a lot more beautiful. The whole truth is that I married a stranger so I would not lose my future. And somewhere along the way, he became the future I am most afraid of losing. There is no box to tick for that on a government form, but it is the kind of thing that makes every knock on our door feel a little less terrifying. Because whatever comes next, renewal forms, random visits, surprise inspections, graduation, new apartments, new cities, we are in it together.